Then we have the yacon. I often recommend this to my friends who are conscious of their health as they get older. Yacon looks like a giant sunflower above ground, but beneath the soil, it produces large, crunchy tubers that taste like a cross between a fresh apple and a watermelon. What makes it truly miraculous is that its sweetness comes from fructooligosaccharides, a type of sugar that the human body does not digest as calories. It is a natural prebiotic that supports gut health without spiking blood sugar levels. Imagine a plant that requires less work than a tomato, grows 6 feet tall, and provides a sweet, healthy snack directly from the earth. That is the kind of intelligence in nature that we have moved away from, but can easily reclaim. Closer to home, I want to speak to you about a plant that is part of our own American heritage, the groundnut, or Apios americana. This is a native perennial vine that fed the indigenous peoples of this continent for millennia. When the first colonists arrived and faced the threat of starvation during those brutal early winters, it was the groundnut that saved them. It grows wild in ditches and along stream banks from Maine to Florida. Unlike the common potato, the groundnut is a nitrogen fixer, which means it actually improves the quality of your soil while it grows. The tubers grow in strings, like brown pearls on a thread, and they contain 3 times the protein of potato. They have a rich, earthy flavor that hints of roasted chestnuts and artichokes. Because it is a vine, you can grow it on a fence or a trellis, making use of vertical space in a small backyard. I find a deep sense of pride in growing a plant that is so fundamentally a part of the American landscape. It is a plant that doesn't need us to survive. It has been thriving on its own for centuries. By bringing it into our gardens, we are honoring a history that predates the very stores we buy our food from today. These plants, the OCA, the yacon, and the groundnut, are symbols of a truly sustainable future. They teach us that we do not need to struggle against the environment to be productive. We only need to listen to the wisdom of those who came before us and embrace the survivors that nature has already provided. Part 5, the ultimate survivors and our sacred trust. As we conclude our look at these hidden gems, I have saved the most remarkable for last. If I were to ask you to name a plant that could survive being buried under volcanic ash and still produce a harvest, you might think I was telling a tall tale, but I am speaking of the aluco, originating from the highest peaks of the Andes. This plant is less of a vegetable and more of a survival mechanism. It grows at 14,000 feet, where the air is thin and the frost is a nightly visitor. Its tubers are a kaleidoscope of neon pinks, oranges, and greens, possessing a firm, silky texture that remains crisp even after cooking. When I think about the aluco or the majestic lovage, a perennial that can provide 8 months of harvest from a single 6-foot-tall plant, I am struck by a realization. These plants are the lead characters of the garden that were somehow relegated to the background. One lovage plant in a corner of your yard can provide more seasoning and savory nutrition than an entire row of supermarket celery, and will do so year after year, through drought and blizzard, without a single drop of pesticide. This brings me to why I believe it is so important for us, the generation that still remembers the value of hard work and the taste of a real homegrown meal, to be the ones to bring these plants back. We are living in a world that feels increasingly fragile. Our food systems are long, complex, and dependent on things we cannot control. But when you plant a perennial like seed beet or a hardy survivor like Alexander, you are creating a pocket of true security. You are building a garden that does not collapse if a truck does arrive or if the price of fertilizer doubles. I often think of our gardens as a sacred trust. We are the stewards of seeds that have traveled across oceans and survived through centuries of human history. By planting these 20 forgotten vegetables, you are doing more than just growing food. You are preserving a biological library. You are ensuring that the flavors of the oyster plant and the Inca gold are not lost to the sands of time. There's a profound, quiet joy in walking out to your garden in the early spring, seeing the good King Henry or the Patience Dock peeking through the snow, and knowing that your family will be fed. I want to encourage you to start small. Choose just 1 or 2 of these rare survivors this season. Seek out the small seed companies and the seed saver exchanges that have kept these legacies alive. When you tuck that first skirt root or groundnut tuber into the earth, you are reconnected with a lineage of gardeners who understood that nature is a partner, not an adversary. It has been a privilege to share these secrets with you today. If you have found value in this journey back to our roots, I invite you to support my efforts to keep this history alive. Your support allows me to continue researching and sharing the wisdom of the earth with those who seek a more resilient and flavorful life. Please consider following our updates and sharing this knowledge with a friend who still believes in the magic of a garden. Together, we can ensure that these ancient survivors are never forgotten again. Thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your commitment to the land. Happy planting. I also want to tell you about sea kale, a plant that grows wild along the rugged cliffs of Europe, surviving salt spray and freezing gales. In Victorian times, gardeners would compete to grow the most tender, blanched shoots. It is a workhorse that can produce for 20 years or more. If you have a corner of your yard where nothing seems to grow, sea kale will likely call home. It reminds me that we don't need to dominate nature with chemicals to get a harvest. We simply need to choose the plants that were built to survive the world as it is. These plants represent a bridge to a simpler time. They don't require you to be a master gardener. They only require you to have the vision to see their worth. As we look at these first few examples, I hope you feel a sense of excitement. We are not just talking about food. We are talking about a garden that cares for itself as much as it cares for you. Part 3, the ocean's flavor in the heartland soil. As we move deeper into our list of forgotten treasures, I want to introduce you to a category of vegetables that once graced the finest dining tables in the world, yet they grow with the ruggedness of a wild thistle. I am speaking of scorzonera and salsify, often referred to as the oyster plants. If you have ever longed for the sophisticated taste of artichoke hearts or fresh shellfish, but found the preparation too daunting, these root vegetables are your answer. Scorzonera, with its striking black skin, hides a pure white flesh that, when simmered in a simple butter sauce, releases an aroma and flavor so similar to oysters that it is truly uncanny. I find it a great irony that these plants were cast aside by industrial agriculture simply because they were unphotogenic. Scorzonera is irregular and forked. It doesn't look like the plastic-wrapped parsnips you see in the store today. But for those of us who live long enough to know that true character is found beneath the surface, these roots are a gold mine. They are packed with inulin, a prebiotic fiber that modern science now tells us is essential for our gut health as we age. But more importantly, they are a gardener's best friend. You can leave them in the frozen ground all winter long across most of the United States. They don't rot, they simply wait. When the ground thaws in March, you can harvest a fresh, nutritious meal before the first seed of the season has even been sown. This leads me to a concept that was vital to the survival of colonial families, the dual-purpose plant. In the limited space of a homestead, every square foot had to earn its keep. This is why Hamburg parsley was a staple. Unlike the decorative garnish we see on plates today, Hamburg parsley was bred to be a workhorse. Above ground, it provides handfuls of aromatic green leaves for your summer salads. Below ground, it develops a thick, white root that tastes like a marriage between parsley and nutty celery. I often tell my friends that planting Hamburg parsley is like getting 2 crops for the price of 1. It is exceptionally cold hardy, and many gardeners find that its flavor actually improves after the first heavy frost in October, as the plant converts its starches into natural sugars to protect itself from the cold. We must also talk about the cardoon. If you have a space in your yard that needs a dramatic, sculptural presence, the cardoon is unrivaled. It is a giant relative of the artichoke, reaching 6 to 8 feet in height with beautiful, silvery, serrated leaves. While it is breathtaking to look at, its true value lies in its stalks. When blanched, a simple process of wrapping the stems to block the light, they become tender and taste remarkably like artichoke hearts. In Italy and parts of the American South, it was once a centerpiece of holiday meals. It thrives in the heat and handles drought better than almost any modern vegetable I know. I see these plants not just as food, but as a form of edible landscape that respects our time and our energy. They remind us that nature is generous if we stop trying to force it into a rigid, artificial box. When you grow scorzonera or Hamburg parsley, you are participating in a tradition of efficiency and flavor that stretches back centuries. You are building a garden that is as beautiful as it is bountiful, proving that we don't have to sacrifice aesthetics for productivity. Part 4, Ancient Treasures and the Power of the Earth. In this chapter of our journey, I want to take you to the high altitudes of the Andes Mountains to discover what I call Inca gold. Thousands of years ago, the Inca civilization perfected the art of high-altitude farming, creating a library of tubers that were designed for survival in the harshest conditions on Earth. Chief among these is the Osea. I find it breathtaking that a vegetable could be so beautiful. Osea tubers emerge in the ground in brilliant shades of pink, red, and yellow, looking more like polished gemstones in food. When eaten raw, they have the crisp tang of a lemon, but when roasted in an oven, they become sweet and nutty, rivaling the finest potatoes you have ever tasted. The beauty of Osea for the American gardener, particularly those of us who have dealt with pests like the Colorado potato beetle for decades, is that our local insects simply do not recognize it as food. It is naturally resistant to the diseases that often plague modern potato crops. If you have a long, cool autumn in your region, Osea will reward you with pounds of colorful tubers that store for months in a simple cool cellar. It reminds us that there's a whole world of flavor beyond the russet and the Yukon gold, waiting for someone with the curiosity to plant something different. Chung Ta Da Lang Quain 20 Loi Rao and Hung Lai Mak Ret and Han Ma Kong Can Tun Yutsong as you see. Fam 1. Decent Dang Dan Mayamodi and Oi Vuan Sao Na. I have spent many years observing the rhythms of the earth, and I have noticed a quiet tragedy unfolding in our modern American gardens. We live in an era of unprecedented convenience, yet when I walk through the aisles of our local supermarkets, I see a profound loss of diversity. You may have noticed it too. The tomatoes that look like perfect red ornaments but taste of nothing, or the lettuce that wilts if the refrigerator door stays open a second too long. We have been taught that a successful garden must look like a catalog. Straight rows, uniform colors, and a constant battle against nature using expensive fertilizers and chemical sprays. But I want to share a secret with you that our grandparents once knew by heart. Chow Mung Den Voi Ken Rare Plant Secrets. And I Kem Fa and Hung Su that Thursday 6V Thien Nin Va the Giois and Quan Chung Tatu Shua Den Ne. Hey Kung Bat Dao Han Trin Cam Fa Nai Bai Gio. Dung Quain Dang KY. Chia Essie Kinakong Bo Lo and Hung Ka Chun Wai Nia. The most productive, nutritious, and resilient vegetables ever cultivated are the ones that almost no one plants anymore. These are the survivors. They are the plants that fed families through the Great Depression and gave strength to soldiers in the Victory Gardens of the 1940s. They did not require bags of synthetic nitrogen or constant coddling. They grew in the tough clay of the Midwest, the sandy soil of the coast, and even in the rocky ground of the Appalachians. Yet, in the last 70 years, we traded these treasures for hybrid varieties bred for shipping durability rather than flavor or ease of growth. I find it deeply moving to think about the immigrant families who arrived at Ellis Island with nothing but a few precious seeds sown into the hems of their coats. They brought plants like skirret, good King Henry, and orage because they knew these crops were a life insurance policy. If the weather turned harsh or the money ran low, these vegetables would still be there, pushing through the soil year after year without asking for anything in return. They were not just food, they were a legacy of resilience. Today, I want to invite you to reclaim that legacy. Imagine a garden where the plants actually want to grow, where you don't have to spend your weekends weeding or worrying about finicky hybrids. Many of the forgotten vegetables are perennials, meaning you plant them once, and they return every spring stronger and more productive than the year before. Some can grow 6 to 8 feet tall, providing a literal wall of food. Others hide their riches underground, producing pounds of tubers that taste like chestnuts, oysters, or apples. I believe that for those of us who have seen the world change over the decades, there's a special joy in returning to what is real. There's a profound sense of peace in knowing that your backyard is not just a hobby, but a self-sustaining sanctuary. We're going to explore 20 of these incredible plants, rare secrets that grow like weeds but eat like delicacies. These are the plants that time forgot, but your garden will remember. Part 2, the indestructible providers of the garden. In our journey to reclaim the wisdom of the past, we must look at the plants that define the word tenacity. I want to start by introducing you to a plant with a name as noble as its history, Good King Henry. While it sounds like it belongs in a history book, this perennial green was once the heartbeat of every English cottage garden. For centuries, families relied on it because it offered a unique bargain. It gave you the tender texture of spinach and the succulent shoots of asparagus from a single plant that simply refuses to die. I find it fascinating that good King Henry was eventually pushed aside by modern spinach. We were told spinach was better because it was easier for large farms to package into plastic bags and ship thousands of miles. But those of us who have spent decades in the garden know the truth. Spinach is finicky. It bolts the moment the American summer sun gets a little too warm, leaving you with nothing but bitter stems. Good King Henry, however, asks for nothing. It handles the shade of an old oak tree just as well as the morning sun. It mines minerals from deep within the earth with roots that reach down into the subsoil, bringing up nutrition that annual vegetables can never touch. When you plant this, you are not just planting a meal, you are planting a permanent resident that will greet you every spring for the rest of your life. Then, there is the mystery of skirret. Imagine a root vegetable so sweet and nutty that Emperor Tiberius of Rome once demanded it as a tribute from the tribes of ancient Germany. In the medieval era, it was so beloved that it was often served as a dessert at banquets. I often wonder how a vegetable that was a staple for 2,000 years could simply vanish. The answer is as simple as it is disappointing. Skirret does not grow in the perfectly straight, uniform shapes that modern grocery store scanners require. Its roots grow in beautiful, irregular clusters. Because it couldn't be standardized for a cardboard box, the world moved on to the orange carrot. But for those of us who value flavor over appearance, skirret is a revelation. It thrives in heavy clay soils where carrots would struggle and split. It is a perennial that you dig up in the fall, take what you need for a hearty winter stew, and leaving the rest to multiply. It has been absent from our landscape for so long that modern pests do not even recognize as food. It is as if nature has kept it in a time capsule, waiting for you to bring it back to the dinner table.